Welcome to the second Tempus Island Devlog. This is my green screen. This microphone is not plugged in, and there's been about 25 hours between the end of the last Devlog and the start of this one, so please don't mind any discrepancies, I'll get around to them.
First up was critical attacks. These were actually pretty easy to make. First, I got the battle manager to pick a number between 0 and 1, and this means every number, not just 0 and 1. And before you ask, it does include 0.752474263554. You can stop asking me about it. Once it gets that number, it compares it to the critical chance. For the farmer, that's 5%, plus his level times 0.02%. And when the random number is less than the critical chance, you get a critical attack, which is these few lines of code, and done. Look at that bonus damage, and we need some gold text so it looks cool. Now it's time to give the player some more information, starting with upgrading the attack text. Currently, it does nothing when the player deals 0 damage, so I decided to change that. It didn't take much code, it just checks the resistance stat here, and if it's a 0, it shows this right here. That's, as you guessed it, null. Because of the way I originally coded this, a lot of the data is split between the enemy parent and the battle manager. The enemy parent deals with attacks to the enemies, shock shock, surprise surprise, and the battle master does timing and the main parties. Then was the other important information text, evasion. Before I coded this, I decided that I would implement a new variable called Mischance. This is the percentage chance that an attacker will miss. It's combined with their evasion stat of the enemy to determine the chance of missing an attack. This gives the evasion buff/debuff more purpose, as not only does it increase the chance of you missing your opponent's attack, but it also decreases the chance of you missing your attack. And I wonder where that idea came from.
Now, in the first version of this script that I wrote, I was around 30 subscribers away from 200. Since then, the Scratch video blew up, and now I'm at 279, probably more once I've re-edited this video. So, the new goal is 300, and if you completely subscribe to get me close to that goal, that'd be greatly appreciated. Anyway, back to the content.
Next up is reverting buffs. Right now, if you buff someone, they stay buffed forever. On the plus side, you could just give yourself like 20 physical attack buffs and run around poking people and kill a stupid amount of people. But on the downside, 4 defense buffs later, I can't kill this thing. So I figured it's time to nerf them. I added in some variables that gets the stats from the start of the battle so they can revert at the end, and gave the buffs a time limit of 3 turns. The buff goes away at the end of the turn, which prioritizes attacking buffs over defending buffs. I could just have it be a different for each buff, but that takes effort, man. Then there was another totally creative, not stolen from anything idea. A text box at the top that tells you when the buffs and debuffs have been reverted. I reused the already existing text box used for displaying the attacks and the overworld farmer. That's a long story and I'll get to it with the 1 week challenge. I then started with my dumbest idea yet, a 3.5 second long pre-turn phase that I didn't implement anyway to skip past. What a great idea past me. When the buff runs out, this text appears at the top that pretty much just says,
"Get fucked, losers!"
So you know you need to reapply your buffs, or you could just not do that and be a cool person.
Now I just need to take this code and stuff it into the enemy parent, which means the same amount of time taken. Why would it mean more time taken? The battle manager deals with time management. You should know this, I told you! Sorry, this just happens when people are fucking idiots.
After a few days I had that finished. When your buff runs out, the text appears. When the enemy's buff runs out, the same text appears. And I also made it so when there's no buff, it just skips the stupidly long pre-attack phase, so I don't have to deal with that anymore. It should have been implemented sooner, but better late than never. And now it's time to improve the saving system. Right now you just walk up to it, press enter, and nothing happens. You don't even get a debug message. But it does save the data, which is the most important thing. I got this basic menu up and running, so instead of just assuming that you want to save, it asks for consent.
After that, I began working on letting you change the attack name so you're not stuck with Incinerate, Volcanic Eruption, and Blizzard. And on the topic of attack names, the ones that I have, they're alright. Most of them were generated by ChatGPT earlier this year because I needed attack names. So if you've got any better attack names, I'll list them here and here. Please leave them in the comments below.
Now going back to the attack selector, I started by making the menu for selecting the attacks. An idea that I've had for a while for this game is to have the menus for the game be a journal of sorts. The pages get flicked through when navigating the menus, and each enemy has their page with a sprite, an image showing their weakness and where you can find them, all their stats and their discovered strengths and weaknesses.
I came up with this idea earlier this year whilst designing a bunch of enemies, as should be seen behind me, and thought about how cool a journal would be for this sort of stuff. So, that's it. I mean, it makes sense, really. You'd find out about them, you'd write stuff about them down. Yeah, I like this idea.
I let you open up the journal and made a loop around menu, which, might I add, should be in everything with menus that use controller or anything that isn't a cursor. It's like a few extra lines of code and literally half the average amount of button presses needed to do anything. I got the attacks in. When you have the attack unlocked, it shows it. When you don't, it just shows question marks. Since I've still got some time, I'll do a quick rundown of this in MS Paint. Give me 1 second. Okay, whenever you level up, you get a few things. One is a skill point, which doesn't have to be used, but is used in the skill tree to change stats, things like increase in physical damage but decrease in magical damage. This is important to the game, I just haven't implemented yet. Then there are attack points. These unlock new attacks for the farmer as he levels up, differently to the other characters. For each level, you get either 1 or 2, I'm still figuring that out, attack points. That you can spend these to either learn a new magic thing, for example you could learn regen, which heals a party member, or you could increase the attack power of a skill, so you could increase the level of something like Incinerate and have it deal more damage, but also cost more MP.
Keep in mind, this mic was not on at all. I just did this because it looks funny.